President Jason Wright, and you're listening to Rambling About Washington.
Today on the Rambling About Washington podcast, we're bringing out the big guns. Washington's biggest signing this year probably wasn't a player. You know, we didn't go A-list shopping for players this year, but we brought in the big guns. My guy, Michael Silver, who works for the NFL Network, over a decade at Sports Illustrated. Yahoo, he's worked everywhere. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Rio. I don't know about the biggest free agent signing, but, you know, I probably can't. I was on the sideline during the preseason. I probably can't do a whole lot out there between the end zones, though.
It's all good, man. Everyone's playing their part as this team is looking to move on and establish a new identity, but appreciate you for coming on. So you're a key content contributor for the team. What exactly does your role entail with the team?
Well, I think we're kind of figuring it out. You know, I've known Ron Rivera for a long, long time. You see the Cal helmet behind me.
Yep,
we both attended that glorious university. And, you know, when he first approached me about this, he just said, I basically want you to come in and do journalism, which, you know, that's music to my ears, because obviously,
that's what you do.
In traditional, journalistic concepts, you don't work for a team you cover, you don't work for a league you cover. Mm-hmm. The lines have obviously been blurred here in the 21st century, but my philosophy at NFL Network has always been just do journalism, and, you know, if people freak out over it, we'll figure it out. But that was Ron's idea. Just like, look, you know, I trust you. I'm going to tell you some stuff. You can talk to other people, and we'll just, you know, you present it and we'll see how it goes. So that's kind of the concept. I've written a couple of columns. I'm going to be doing some writing. I've, you know, appeared on some of the shows. We've got that poppin' new podcast with Renee Washington coming in to host. You know, Julie Donaldson does a bunch of programming. And so I'm excited about all of that. And then in the preseason, I got to be a sideline reporter, which was something new for me and really, really fun. Kenny Albert and Joe Theismann, a couple of pros, and just a really cool operation. So, yeah, it's still to be determined, but I'll be, in addition to covering the league, I'll be keeping a very close eye on the Washington football team.
I love it. I love it. So how was it being on the sideline? Was it a little awkward at first?
No, I mean, the being on the sideline was cool. It's just, you know, actually doing interviews in game, that's obviously a preseason thing more than a regular season thing. But, you know, my first fear was that, you know, you got to keep your head on a swivel, that I'd be sitting there mid-sentence with like London Fletcher and like a sweep would come and I'd be, you know, pummeled into oblivion. But no, I mean, really it was a really smooth preseason. I mean, amazingly, there were no serious injuries or no long-term injuries. And then the only injury I remember on the Washington side, it was a concussion, which is obviously serious, but Torrey McTyer in the last game. But, you know, other than that, there was not a lot of injury drama, which was great. And, you know, I had a lot of fun during the interviews. One of the more amusing moments came when Sam Cosmi, the rookie right tackle, you know, they would bring the players over, and sometimes we couldn't get them on right away. We'd have to wait for a play, or sometimes we'd have to wait for a punt or a timeout. And he was waiting a while, and his fellow linemen saw him up there waiting for a long time. And it's already a taboo for a rookie to get the attention. So he told me as we were waiting there, they're probably going to find me. And that's not a team find. Sure. That's a fellow offensive lineman going, hey, Rook, cool your jets. So, you know, I was able to interview him. I did ask him on live TV if he thought that if he were fined, that Joe Theismann should pay it. You know, when they came back to Joe, he was like, hey, thanks, Mike. And, you know, all in good fun. But then Sam did mouth to me later in the game, like, yeah, they fined me. And he wouldn't tell me how much, but I told him that I owe him beers at the very least.
Yeah, you definitely owe him beers, owe him a ribeye, something.
Something.
So the obvious connection that brings you to Washington is Ron Rivera. Y'all going back to your Cal days. If you're allowed to answer this question, would you have ever considered that if Ron Rivera wasn't here?
Probably not.
I respect it.
And really, it's it's not just because of my relationship with Ron. It's what his presence meant and has meant, and what has happened since Daniel Snyder made that hire. And so, bringing in Julie Donaldson, bringing in Jason Wright, the name change was a big thing for me. I mean, I can go back and show you a clip from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat in probably 1990 where I railed against the name, and I stayed consistent for 3 decades. And, not because of me, but eventually the world caught up to that sensibility. And, look, we can all have disagreements. That's something I was never going to, feel good about. And, sadly, it took, the George Floyd murder and an ensuing wave of, racial enlightenment and protests against injustice. And so, the good news is that's not the name anymore. And so, I don't think I would have done it. The idea of a team-specific carve-out from NFL Network was very new. Steve Weish, my good friend and colleague, he paved the way and did that with the Falcons about a month or two before I did. And so because of that, I think, Ron noticed it and I obviously noticed it. And so he thought, well, if Steve's doing that, maybe you could do that for us. And so, because of my relationship with Ron, that was why the conversation took place in the first place. And I probably would not have done it if it were not for Ron.
And I respect that honest answer. I only got one more Cal connection question to ask, and we can talk about this Washington football season. Okay, so we got Ron here. We got you here. Oh, we got to complete the triumvirate of Cal Bears, and we need to get a quarterback here next year. Y'all got the inside track on A.R.A.W. What's going on with Rodgers?
I don't think you're talking about Jared Goff either, but I'm hoping he stabilizes in Detroit and is not on the market. But the Aaron Rodgers thing, it certainly appears as though he will be in play next year. Now, a lot of things can happen in a year. And remember, Kobe Bryant once demanded that the Lakers trade him to the Clippers specifically. And they were like, oh, hey, we hear you totally. Thanks for letting us know. The answer is no. And several championships later, and it all worked out. But, when Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, by the way, post a Last Dance video, right before the season, that's not media speculation. That's them saying it. So, I think, I wrote about Ryan Fitzpatrick and what Ron's philosophy on the quarterback situation was, and it would be an oversimplification to say, hey, let's just wait a year and try to get Aaron Rodgers, although trust me, they and anyone else would try to. But I think I would say this, they felt like they could take a very big swing this year, but he wasn't sure they were ready building it, and they didn't want to sacrifice the building process. He wants to build this team front to back, and obviously got a great head start with what he inherited on those lines. But, they think that a year from now, they'll be in a situation where now if we plug in an elite quarterback,
we're ready.
Watch out. And so, certainly Aaron Rodgers will be priority A, B, and C for them and for other teams. But even if they don't get him, they should be in a situation where they could make a bold move. If not for an existing player in a trade, then, depending on how the college season pans out and who's a hot prospect, something in the draft.
Yeah, I think 2022 is the perfect timing to go all in, especially if you come off back-to-back division titles with our quarterback, who we do have here right now, which was the perfect transition. And you were talking about your article, the first article and piece of content you've dropped since joining the team. It was a really good read of how it went. Like, we were really close to getting Matt Stafford in the offseason, and they actually had a plan with Fitz. It wasn't like it just came out of nowhere. You want to talk about that article? Because I enjoyed reading it, by the way.
Well, thank you. And by the way, I did write an introductory column, so it's the second one technically. Oh. But yeah, it's all good. So, you know, they were looking at Matthew Stafford, certainly, and they offered a 1 and a 3, which, you know, they thought was a pretty good offer. Now, interestingly, because the Rams got so desperate to get him, which required them to get out of the Goff contract, which had value that they had translated into probably a whole other first-round pick. And because the Lions actually wanted Goff, because Brad Holmes had been in L.A. and is a fan of Goff, Anthony Lynn was a fan of Goff, the offensive coordinator. So it was hard ultimately to beat that. It did come suddenly from the Washington perspective, but you know, so that didn't happen. You know, Rodgers, there were rumblings that he wanted out that were later flared up on draft night. You know, Russell Wilson certainly was poking his way around trying to get out. You know, Deshaun Watson lawsuits was certainly trying to get out, and there was a belief that someone could make that move. And so, you know, and Carson Wentz, Darnold, you know, there were some lesser, you know, there were some trades for lesser value that were in play. And then you had a crazy situation in that 5 rookies would end up going in the top 15 at quarterback. So there were a lot of permutations. They ultimately thought, okay, we didn't get Stafford. We think Fitz is the best play, you know, while keeping an eye on those other things, Mariota, you know, kind of keeping an eye on those other things, decided on Fitz. But then as the draft neared, they were like, you know what? We're sitting there at 19. We could probably get down. We think Fields might last, you know, into that range where we could get. And they really like Justin Fields, and that's Ron and Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew. You know, they're fans. So they thought reasonably hard, even after hitching the wagon to Fitz, that, well, maybe we could get Fields too. It would have cost them more than they wanted to give up to get into that range. And ultimately, they decided, you know what, let's stay where we are. And obviously, they really wanted Jamin Davis, and that worked out in that way for them.
So, and then the team that jumped us was also the other team that has not had a franchise quarterback in like the modern history of the world, but we're not going to go there, Chicago right now. How good can this team be this year with Fitzpatrick under helm?
I think they can be pretty good. You know, we've seen when Fitz is good, you know, it can be pretty good. I mean, that Jets team almost made the playoffs a few years back. You know, there are times when people start getting pumped up on Fitz and then it looks not so good. And then they got, you know, there's a meme with a cycle of Ryan Fitzpatrick that people make fun of. But, you know, talking to him, he really, you know, I said, do you think you're better than you ever were? And he's like, I definitely am. And here's why. And he gave a lot of reasons. And I've seen this, you know, I've covered this league for more than 3 decades. And I've seen a lot of quarterbacks who are older and you think, yeah, that guy's got to be past his prime, but they just have it so figured out at that point. They're so calm back there. They're so on it, and it's almost just slowed down for them. And so I do think there's a scenario where he could be pretty good. And you know, they think the weapons are a lot better than what they had. And if he can get the ball out and stay healthy and run the offense, you know, they could be pretty good. Now, he did say, I'm not falling into that trap of, hey, man, all I have to do is manage the game. The defense is going to carry this team. You can't think like that. We have to be aggressive and try to get points. But, you know, Chase Young is a human game wrecker, and there are many, many co-pilots in that play.
Absolutely. And I just see this team like, what we have put together right now, on and off the field, it just feels like a somewhere between 9 to 11 win team if things play out how they should. You know, the schedule's hard, but a schedule's a schedule. The parity in the NFL varies every year. You don't know what the injury situation, you don't know if COVID's going to come in, knock on wood. But I think the team is in good shape, and we're reining in a new identity here. Do you have any preferences or thoughts in the rebrand process? I want to know what you like.
I'm pretty sure in that contributor deal that naming power did not come up. I was asked about this on live TV or radio right after I joined, and my answer then was, first of all, let's start with anything that doesn't mention skin color. That would be my first choice. And,
bingo.
I would say I would expound on that and say nothing that talks about ethnicity or tries to generalize a group of tribes that collectively were maybe like not done right by the people who came over from Europe when they got to this land. I mean, it's just, there's so many ways you could go that don't get into that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, super invested in the name. I mean, it's the Washington football team now, which is, kind of funny. Yeah, anything that just doesn't get into all that. Cause I just always thought, people got so passionate about the argument, and I was one of the people very passionate.
Trust me. Washington football Twitter. I know personally. Yeah. Washington football Twitter is a problem. Yeah. That's how I was going to close out the show. I was going to say.
Well, we'll get to that. But the name thing to me, people got so caught up in, is it offensive? Is it not offensive? I was always like, hey, look, if like someone from Finland came over to visit you and they were like, hey, and you were like, hey, and we've got this like football, and here we are, the nation's capital, and what's the team called? And you like had to explain to them that the team was that. It just like that to me was how it just seemed weird. Like, what? Wait, after it just, so I trust that whatever the final outcome is going to be way better than what it was.
I think so too. I think also the name should stay away from politics, and while I love and support the military, I think they should stay away from military because it ties to politics as well. I think me personally, I want them to pick the K9 that howls to the moon. It doesn't have to have a color attached to it, but that's just my personal preference. But I'm with whatever it is because at the end of the day, I'm a diehard fan of this team. And before you go and before you plug all your stuff and what you got coming, what was going on with you in Washington football Twitter? Because me personally, I can tell you, we fight with each other every day. So I can imagine how outsiders would feel like, okay, I want this off my timeline.
Remember when we push and shove, it's only love. Okay, well, first of all, I think I've sparred with every fan base. Like even like last year, Carlos Dunlap was not being treated great by the Bengals, and the Seahawks ended up swooping in and trading him. But I thought it was a great trade. Like, I think John Schneider's the best GM in football, and I knew what they needed, and I felt like the Bengals weren't handling all their veteran stuff great. And I was excited on Twitter that the Seahawks made that trade. And all of a sudden, man, I had like the whole Bengal Twitter on me. And I just remember going like, wait, Bengal fans? Like, this is cute. Like, you guys actually like, you're coming at me now. Like, this might be the last of the 32. So, listen, I have 32 babies. I love them equally. Some give me more trouble than others. I would say my Browns experiences in recent years, I'm very close friends with Hugh Jackson. I also grew up with Steve Kerr and grew up a Warrior fan, but in LA. So I had a lot of fun with the Warriors. Cavs fans, I don't think we're into that. My relationship with Hugh exacerbated things. And so I would say Browns fans have particularly been rough. Patriot fans, with the scandals, and there have been some stuff. Raider fans are crazy because, like, I lived in Oakland for years. I love Oakland. I love the A's, love the Warriors. But Raider fans, I think half of them think I'm the worst thing that's ever come to journalism. Like Al Davis used to ban me, and there are whole threads devoted to how I'm a Raider hater. And then there's other people who are like, oh, he's so pro Raiders. So that one's weird. I grew up a 49er fan. Obviously, once I started covering them and then the league, that went away. But 49er fans have definitely turned on me before. Even Cal fans, which is, I literally am a Cal alum and fan. I've been turned on by Cal fans before, which is funny. But I would say that the Washington thing hasn't been particularly worse than a lot of others.
Give it some time. Give it some time.
well, listen. I did do like a clemency thing when I took the job. We had some fun, and I said anyone I blocked who identifies as a Washington fan and says, "Hey, I'm a Washington fan,"
hug it out.
Block me. I can get word to me. I will unblock. And listen, if you get blocked a second time, and I have, I'm not one of those people who blocks because we sparred or you didn't like what I said. I mean, blatant disrespect, anything racist or bigoted, or this is a biggie, questioning my journalistic integrity. In other words, I don't like what you said. I disagree with you is totally cool, but you made that up, or you're like, whoa. Okay. I mean, I got into journalism because of, let's be honest, let's bring it back to Washington. The reason I became a journalist was because of seeing, Watergate and the Pentagon Papers and stuff that the Washington Post, the greatest newspaper in American history, did in the 70s to help our world and expose lies. And so, I take journalism really, really seriously. So, yeah, I listen. Every team I've had to report things that people don't, wish hadn't been reported. That's just journalism. And then as a columnist and an analyst who gives his opinions, a lot of times my opinions have been unpopular. And dude, let's face it, there have been fewer places in the NFL that were as dysfunctional in recent years. I mean, when you hire a brilliant talent evaluator, Scott McLuhan, who has a history with alcohol that he talks about in a story before you hire him for a major website, and in the story he's having beers with the writer, so it's not a mystery. And then you decide you want to fire him during the combine, and it's because his
grandma's funeral or something.
You think he's drinking, but then in response to that, you hammer out an extension for your coach at Prime 47, which is a steakhouse, but is essentially a bar during the combine. And I know because I was there, like I always am. And in Prime 47, you have the team president and the head coach and the owner hammering out an extension while you're to consolidate power while you're getting rid of the GM because he drinks. Then you are dysfunctional. Don't blame that one on me.
I appreciate that honesty, and that's exactly why I wanted you on the show, because I know you were gonna tell shit how it is, and at the end of the day, like, you're just gonna speak your mind. And thank you for coming on, because we have a lot of content creators in this fan community that we have here. The fact that you came on with mine first, I appreciate it. I was probably the first one to send a message over to Sean as soon as you signed the deal. Plug whatever you need to plug, and I appreciate it, man.
Well, I'll tell you what. I heard you were special, so I just decided. I just went with my instincts. So my instincts are pretty good, I feel like. So thank you for having me on. I do have a podcast that I do with my daughter Natalie. It's called Pass It Down. It's available on all major platforms. We did have Ron and Stephanie Rivera on shortly after the announcement. And, we will certainly be keeping a close eye on Washington. So anyone who gets a chance to check out Pass It Down. And I'm going to have some announcements coming in the very near future. Okay. So I can't quite plug everything yet. But, if you are following me on Twitter because I unblocked you, or just because I haven't blocked you yet, or because you can put up with it at Mike Silver, or if you just, see announcements as they happen, keep an eye, because I got some stuff popping, and I will be unrolling it hopefully in the near future.
Okay, that sounds juicy, man. My man Mike's going to release the name soon. I'm just kidding. But that's going to do for today's episode of Rambling About Washington. Follow me on all platforms at Rio_Robinson91. Until next time, hail to the nameless football team.